Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Movie Burner Podcast, the new weekly podcast from Movie Burner Entertainment, where we discuss the latest entertainment news, reviews and share our views. So what's up first, John?
Well, director James Mangold has announced in the last week that there's going to be a spin-off of Logan, going by the name of X-23, of course focused on the character of Laura Kinney, played by Daphne Keane, the great young actress who, of course, was absolutely outstanding in her performance as the character in question in Logan. Fox have been eager to create a spin-off of the character that's been much rumoured in the last few months, so what's your thoughts on it, Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, with the massive success of Logan at the box office, I think the film grossed over $600 million worldwide, and Fox have already launched an Oscar campaign for the movie itself. It was only a matter of time before the producers turned their attention to a movie focused on Laura, and it kind of hinted at the end of Logan anyway. You could see there was a sequel in the works anyway, but yeah, it's good news. It's good news for Fox. It's good news for the X-Men franchise. We were talking about the New Mutants last week and how Fox and the X-Men franchise, the direction they were going off in, and this just adds more to their franchise, you know, and yeah, it's good news.
Yeah, well, I think with the success of Wonder Woman under Patty Jenkins and obviously DC, proving that a female-led film can be successful going forward, I think that's really helped their case in really going with this X-23 potential new franchise or film. Also a great little character with amazing potential, which was almost immediately palpable when she wiped out the soldiers in Logan at Xavier's hideout in the desert. And yeah, I'm really excited to see this character going forward, what they're going to do. I was excited with the actual array of young mutants that were following her in her journey across the border towards the end, and it's really interesting what they're going to do with it. I've actually been doing a little bit of research on a couple of different potential stories they could be possibly following with the new franchise. X-Men Childhood's End was one potential story that they were talking that could possibly follow, where she joins New Mutants at Xavier's School for Gifted Mutants. Of course, the timeline wouldn't work with that, with Charles obviously meeting his untimely death at the end of Logan, but
major spoiler.
Yeah, major spoiler. But with the group of young mutants, as I touched upon there, present at the end of Logan, learning how to control their powers and work together, I think it could be a potential story that they could pursue. Another one that was talked about was All New Wolverine, where X-23 had to step up and literally become the new Wolverine following his death, and of course with the tragic death of the Logan character at the end of Logan. Yeah, that's probably a likely one for them to go with going forward. There was a talk of multiple clones and that's something I'm not too keen on. But yeah, I mean, there seems to be a mine of different stories they could really.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that you know, if they're going to use Daphne Keane in this film, the events of the X-23 is going to take place possibly not long after the events of Logan. You know, just going back to the young actress herself, I saw this movie back in March when it was released, and she was a standout actor and character in the film. You know, we were so used to the characters of Charles Xavier and Wolverine. It came as a big surprise just how prominent this young actress was in the movie and how memorable she was. I've not actually seen Logan since it was released, but her performance did stay with me long after the film, and it'll be interesting to see who they'll cast in this movie as well alongside Daphne Keane. I know there's no release date of this yet. It's very early days, isn't it, John?
Yeah, I mean, it's literally just been announced within the last 6 days that they're in works with this thing. There's no obviously a set date for production or stuff like that. They've not started filming, so it's really all speculation at the moment. All we know is James Mangold's directing it and that Daphne Keane's going to be the lead in the series. But I find it interesting what Fox is doing in general with the X-Men universe, if for want of a better phrase. I'm not sure if it is a universe yet, but it's certainly in the workings with the whole X-Force film that's coming out, the announcement of Josh Brolin in Deadpool 2, a potential Gambit film coming in the future. Obviously, as I said, Deadpool 2, New Mutants, and now X-23. Things are very promising for the X-Men verse and what Fox are doing here. They're building some.
And we can't forget Dark Phoenix next year either, where I'm not sure if this is going to be the last instalment from that current cast with Jennifer Lawrence, Michael Fassbender, Evan Peters, James McAvoy and so forth. I think it might be. I think this might be the end for this sort of timeline. And I think when the New Mutants come out and X-23, I think could be a bit of confusion with casual fans if you get different timelines running.
Yeah, I think I was just about to touch on that myself. The timelines seem to be a little bit all over the place. Obviously X-23 is taking place, and I think it's 2055 or something like that. It's a long time in the future.
Yep.
Whereas Deadpool 2 seems to be current day. Gambit, I think, seems to be current day. X-Force, I think, again, seems to be current day. New Mutants, judging on what I think you says, James McAvoy is going to be making an appearance. That obviously would hint that that's quite a bit in the past, with him playing a younger version of Charles Xavier. So there does seem to be a bit of a Terminator thing going on here, where we've got 3 or 4 different timelines, and it'll be interesting to see how they can maybe amalgamate these together and going forward. But I'm looking forward to what they're doing at Fox. It looks interesting. And again, just touching on the character of X-23, I find it quite an interesting character in general. She's also meant to be a highly skilled martial artist, which is quite evident from Logan, but it also goes on to say that she's an excellent marksman thanks to her training to be an assassin at a young age with that sort of a research group or whatever. I'm not sure what it was in Logan. But it also says she's more agile than Wolverine because she lacks an exoskeleton made of adamantium like Logan did. Her claws are only coated with it, so that makes her quicker, and we obviously see the better healing abilities in Logan as well. So
it'll be interesting to see, John, what rating this film will get. As we know, Logan did get the UK 15 rating over here and R rating in the US and Canada, so it'll be very interesting to see where they go with this and what kind of tone they will go with, whether or not they will stick with the R rating or not. I hope they do, because I think that it worked well with Logan. I think the tone of Logan and the rating was appropriate for the story, and I hope they continue with that.
Yeah, that seems to be a route they're going down with these comic book films these days in general, where they are going for the R-rated films and the 15-rated films, depending on what country you're in. I think I read something that they were maybe perhaps talking about making the tone a little bit lighter. They weren't possibly going to be following with Logan, so I don't know what rating they're going to go with going forward, but certainly I liked the tone of Logan. I liked the character of X-23 in Logan. She was very reminiscent of a hit girl in the way she moved and the violence, stabbing people and so on and so forth. So yeah, I'm happy with the tone. I hope they perhaps continue going forward.
Yeah, I mean, the franchise seems to be going forward. It's moving on, leaving the X-Men 3 Last Stand really in the dark now, and I'm pleased to see that. Looking forward to it. 2018, as I said last week, is going to be a big year for X-Men franchise and Fox, and looking forward to it. What have we got next, John?
Well, given the time of year, it's perhaps fitting that a new horror trailer has been released for an interesting film going by the name of Winchester, the House That Ghosts Built. It's following on from really a long list of recent horror films which are focusing on true stories and true locations and maybe embellishing the truth a little bit. It certainly, from the tone of it, looks promising. It's got a great looking cast, Oscar winning Helen Mirren in it, looking absolutely terrifying. Has a score which is spine tingling and ominous, and the feel of it it looks like a good horror. What do you think, Steve?
I hope Helen Mirren doesn't take offence to what you just said there. But no, I mean, it's the trailer itself, was it's I think a 2-minute trailer, and I was very impressed with it. I've got to be honest. Anyone that knows me, horror's not my favourite genre, but it looks interesting. I like it is based on true events. That kind of interests me. Director's Michael Spierig, is it? Peter Spierig, who also wrote this film as well, also directed the new release Jigsaw, which came out on Friday here in the UK. The reviews in that early days isn't looking good for them, but from this trailer it does look very dark, very eerie, and a great cast. Jason Clarke's in there. I'm not too sure about Sarah Snook. I know that she was in the film Steve Jobs, but apart from that, don't know really much about her. But yeah, it's looks a good film.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with Michael and Peter Spierig's previous work, to be honest. I'm not a fan of the kind of a Saw franchise, which I believe Jigsaw is perhaps part of, so I can't really speak on that. I'm not going to be going to see that. But just touching upon, as you said, you enjoy the real locations. It's kind of it seems to be falling on very much in the footsteps of a Conjuring 1 or a Conjuring 2, where they of course visited Amityville and a haunting, I believe, in Yorkshire in the second one. Winchester is a real place. It's in California, just outside San Francisco, and it's a very strange house. It was a house I was actually familiar with prior to the film. I was into ghost programmes about 5 or 6 years ago, and I do believe they visited it. So it's a very strange house, and I'm quite frankly surprised that it's took them this long to maybe visit this as a potential location for a horror film. As you touched upon with the cast, yeah, very good cast. Helen Mirren, as I said, looks utterly terrifying. It can only be promising that an actress of her calibre is appearing in a film like this. It must be a good script. Jason Clarke, I actually just watched Dawn of the Planet of the Apes again the other day. He was quite prominent in that film, playing the human across from Caesar. He's a good actor. He's got a slightly hateable face though, but yeah, I mean, he seems a good actor. And yeah, I mean, the cast looks promising. I don't really know what else to say about this film.
Oh, just touching on what you said about based on true events, it did remind me of the Amityville, the original that is. I remember watching it at an early age and being terrified in a different way to the likes of Halloween or Friday the 13th, and the reason for that was because it was based on true events. Now, how close the events are true to the real life and legend, if you like, remains to be seen, but it does add an element of intrigue to this film and the horror genre.
Yeah, I mean, I find the story of the real Sarah Winchester quite intriguing in and of itself. Of course, the widow of William Wirt Winchester, a famous manufacturer of repeating rifles, she was fairly grief-stricken after her husband's death, and she firmly believed that ghosts were coming back to haunt her, and she visited a medium who informed her that her belief was true, and that she should expand her house further to appease the spirits. So that was an interesting historical footnote that I found to be quite frankly tragic. Yeah, I find the real story interesting, so it's certainly intriguing what they're going to do going forward and how they're going to fit this into the film.
Yeah, let's hope they stay true to the actual events of the film. I think that would add more intrigue to the film itself. And just getting back to Helen Mirren, I think she'll excel in this role anyway. You know, an experienced actress who I first saw in Prime Suspect here in the UK as Superintendent Jane Tennyson. Lately I saw her play a smaller role in the film Trumbo as Hedda Hopper, and she was a standout in that as well. So Jason Clarke, he's a bit of a mixed bag as far as I'm concerned. You know, he's got a great resume appearing in films like The Great Gatsby, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Child 44, which she had a small part in, but it was an excellent film. Terminator Genesis, you know, just no, I don't want to go there, but he was fantastic in the film Everest, which I did a movie review on not that long ago. I thought he was excellent in that film, standout performance, and from the trailer it looks like he's got a big part to play in this as well. Another bit of breaking news from last week was of course the news that Ben Mendelsohn is going to, rumoured I should say, to appear in the upcoming Captain Marvel film, John.
Yeah, he's been playing quite a lot of villains recently. It's of course rumoured that he's going to be the villain in the new Captain Marvel film. He played director Krennic in Rogue One. I believe he's playing the Sheriff of Nottingham in the new Robin Hood film, which is coming out. So it seems to be playing a lot of villain roles recently, and he's certainly a good enough actor to pull it off. I enjoyed his performance in Rogue One. He was a standout character in that, standout new character I should say. And yeah, I like him as an actor. I think he'll add to an already great cast from what I'm seeing. Brie Larson casted as Captain Marvel, Samuel Jackson of course coming back to reprise his role as Nick Fury. So yeah, I mean, I'm quite happy with this news.
Yeah, Marvel Studios did tease us earlier this year that aliens would feature in the film, as I recall, and while the studio has refused to comment on the casting, I think Mendelsohn has previously worked with the film directors, so I think there's a lot of truth in this news coming out, and I think he'd certainly fit into the Marvel universe. He's a very versatile actor.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm actually quite looking forward to Captain Marvel. I know it's not coming out for another couple of years yet, but what I've been hearing is quite interesting. Obviously, as I say, is Brie Larson, great talented actress, was in The Gambler, The Room, and obviously I reviewed Free Fire earlier in the year, a great little short film where she played alongside Cillian Murphy. And yeah, I can't wait to see her portrayal of Captain Marvel. I believe it's not a character I'm too familiar with. As I say, I wasn't brought up with comics as a child, but from what I'm reading, it's really Marvel's answer to Superman, where she's got super strength, she can fly, she can really absorb and utilise energy. So yeah, it's an interesting character. It's been about for a long time, I think about 40 years now in the comics, so once again, as we spoke about earlier with the Wonder Woman thing, it's really opening up doors now. But although I do believe this particular film was announced in 2014 prior to Wonder Woman, so maybe Marvel were thinking ahead. Anyway.
Yeah, just going back to Mendelsohn, you know, he is slowly becoming a go-to villain in Hollywood, following his role in Rogue One and the upcoming Robin Hood Origins, where he portrays the Sheriff of Nottingham. And as we all know, Mendelsohn also shined on TV, winning an Emmy, playing the black sheep of the family on Netflix Bloodline. So fingers crossed he is involved in this project. Also Samuel Jackson.
Yeah, I believe he's playing a young Nick Fury. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see which route they go down with that. Obviously it's going to have to be CG because he's much older now. I think he's in his 60s.
I think if they're going down that road, John, I think it will be limited screen time for the character. I think with Robert Downey Jr. it was very much a cameo from his younger self. The same with Michael Douglas and Ant-Man.
And obviously Kurt Russell as well.
Yeah, Kurt Russell as well in the Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2. Or Volume 2, sorry. And Peter Cushing in Rogue One probably was on screen a wee bit too long, but I think it might be a cameo from Mr. Jackson.
And yeah, I mean, just going on to another thing, I know it's not actually connected to the Ben Mendelsohn casting story per se, but I find it interesting the way Marvel are continuing to interconnect all their various different properties. Obviously with the release of Guardians of the Galaxy 2 this year and the forthcoming Avengers Infinity Wars, I find it interesting that this character was prevalent in both comic runs, the Guardians of the Galaxy and Avengers, and again interconnects that universe. I can only say much respect to Kevin Feige, who's done a fantastic job really bringing this all together over a decade. Really tying into that, the release dates, I read something interesting that this film was due to be released in July 6, 2018. It's been pushed back to March 8, 2019, and that's falling in between the two Avenger films which I spoke about. It's clear that Marvel have big plans for Captain Marvel as a character. They want to perhaps introduce her in the first Avengers film, and then much like they did with Homecoming and Black Panther, they really develop her character in a standalone film, which I'm really looking forward to.
And another trailer that dropped last month, the international trailer that is, was Darkest Hour. The original trailer for this dropped back in July. I remember seeing this. This is the new Gary Oldman film, John.
Yeah. I was really surprised. I actually didn't know that this film was coming out until the middle of last week when I went on to Empire Online and seen a photograph, and I was really taken aback by Gary Oldman. I couldn't believe how much he looked like Churchill. He looks completely different. He looks as though he's put maybe a bit of weight on, but obviously with the prosthetics it's eerie how much he looks like the man. And yeah, this film intrigues me quite a bit. As a World War II buff, I've never really read into the man Churchill before really. I've read a lot about World War II. I've read about the famous 101st Airborne. I've read about Hitler and the Third Reich, but I'm intrigued to really see the story of Churchill, and really this particular part of his story before World War II really kicked off, taking place in 1940, before Dunkirk, which obviously was portrayed earlier in the year by Christopher Nolan, wonderfully, might add. So yeah, I'm really intrigued by this film. I'm intrigued with Gary Oldman playing Churchill. Just from the trailer alone, it looks as though he's nailed the little mannerisms and the speech, and yeah, I'm excited about this. Yeah,
it's quite a chilling trailer. The original trailer, that is, I think the international trailer is a slower paced version of the original trailer. The quote in that got me was Churchill's "You cannot reason with a tiger when your head is in its mouth." Yeah. Really does send chills, down you when you hear that, and what he was up against with the UK government and obviously the monarchy. But no, it's certainly a film that's going to be directed by Joe Wright, who seems to be drama based. He directed Pride and Prejudice in 2005, followed that up with Atonement in 2006, and then Anna Karenina in 2012, and all these films are very drama based, so it's looking like this film's going to be going in that direction anyway. It's not going to be an action film or anything like that. It's going to be very centred on Churchill, possibly on King George VI, I think it is. Yeah. Ben Mendelsohn is playing. Yeah. Kristen Scott Thomas is also in this, playing Clementine Churchill, and Lily James, so it's a great cast as well.
Yeah, I mean, what I found interesting when I actually googled this film was quite the striking differences between IMDb's rating of the film and Rotten Tomatoes. IMDb has it at a lowly 5.4 out of 10 and Rotten Tomatoes has it at a very decent 79%, so it seems to be splitting opinion quite a bit already. It's not even been released yet. I don't pay much attention to that because, as I've said numerous times, movies are quite subjective, so it'll not really impact my decision to watch the film or my anticipation of its release. In terms of the director, yeah, I'm familiar with a couple of his films. I was hammered to death with Pride and Prejudice with my mother. A couple of years ago she was obsessed with this, and obviously my sister as well. It's very much a female's film, it's romantic and so on and so forth, but that, along with Anna Karenina, if I've pronounced that right, two films I've seen him direct. What's interesting is they're both period pieces, and they are extremely accurate to the respective time periods they're set in, and they are decent films. They're not my cup of tea, but they certainly are decent films. Slightly different in terms of genre to this one, but as you did mention, Stephen, he's done Atonement as well, and there was one incredible shot in that film of Dunkirk, and I think it was a one-take shot, and it was, if you've not seen it, go onto YouTube and YouTube the shot, because it's utterly incredible, the visuals, and he captures the feel and the horror of that particular conflict. In terms of writers, I'm quite intrigued that Anthony McCartan has written the script for this. He was obviously responsible for Stephen Hawking's biopic, The Theory of Everything, which won Oscars, so The Darkest Hour is definitely, if nothing else, it's going to be well written. And just touching upon the cast, you're absolutely right, the cast is utterly incredible. Ben Mendelsohn playing, again, a completely different role. We were talking about his propensity for villainous roles. This time he's playing King George VI. Elsewhere you have Stephen Dillon, obviously of Stannis Baratheon fame in Game of Thrones, playing Viscount Halifax. He's a great actor. I enjoyed his time in Game of Thrones. I thought he was quite underused. And yeah, there's a couple of other people that I'm quite intrigued by. Kristen Scott Thomas, as you mentioned, played Aunt Mimi in Nowhere Boy. It was a great performance from her. Apparently playing Churchill's wife, and she's got quite a meaty role. Lily James, obviously she was in Baby Driver, and she also starred as the lead character in Cinderella, which I have seen. I don't know how, but I've seen it. And it's actually a surprisingly decent remake of a classic cartoon. It's not got anywhere near the attention it deserves, and she's a good young actress as well. So the director's great, the writer's great, and the cast seems to be great, and also I'm intrigued by the story, so this looks like a win for me.
Yeah, if we just mention the cinematography by Bruno Del Bonello, who also did Amelie and Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. You know, you just mentioned the visuals in the trailer as well, which are simply stunning, and combine that with the score by, I think it's the Italian composer Dario Marianelli. Simply stunning, great combination, great trailer, very chilling and haunting, and I'm looking forward to this film. One thing that did strike me was the release dates of the film being released in the USA on the 22nd of November this year. Us guys in the UK will not see this till the 12th of January 2018. Strange one. I've never seen a big gap like that before for a film, but looking forward to it anyway.
Yeah, especially when it's based on one of the most prominent British Prime Ministers of all time. Yeah, and just finally touching upon what you says there about the cinematographer, as a big Harry Potter fan, I did love the visuals in Half-Blood Prince. It was very nice. It was quite a darker visual, and there was a couple of sweeping wide shots in that film which really made an impression on me, and one in particular where it swung up a tower to focus on Draco Malfoy, but I'm not going to get into Harry Potter. I could talk about that all day. The score did make an impact on me as well, kind of left a bit of an impression like Dunkirk, where it was eerie high notes and kind of a piano bass, and it was lovely. Yeah, so I'm excited for this. Well guys, this is the time in the show where we like to do a short little profile on our favourite actors and actresses. This week we are going to be discussing yet another great British export in the acting world, and his name is Gary Oldman. A fantastic actor, very underrated in my opinion. Should have had an Oscar by now. Been in a multitude of fantastic films. Incredibly versatile. But what's your thoughts on the man, Stephen?
Yeah, Gary Oldman's been part of my life ever since the mid-80s. You know, his most memorable early role came when he played the Sex Pistol Sid Vicious in the biopic Sid and Nancy from 1986. Picked up a Evening Standard Film Award as Best Newcomer in that, and from then on he's just excelled. You know, and from going from Sid and Nancy, I remember his role in JFK as Lee Harvey Oswald, obviously playing the villain in that in 1991. One thing that does stand out to me about Gary Oldman is that he's not really built up a momentum of smaller, lower budget films. He seems to have dived right into the deep end, you know, when you look at his resume. Going into Oliver Stone's JFK, the following year Bram Stoker's Dracula, playing Dracula, clearly the villain again. Then the next year he was in True Romance. I haven't saw that film, so I can't really comment on it. But the standout one in the 90s for me was when he appeared in The Fifth Element, John.
Yeah, of course, playing Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg. What a name.
Yes.
That name perfectly embodies everything this character is. It's just an incredible character and a very good film. Again, I think it's an underrated film. Well, perhaps, maybe it's not. Maybe I'm talking nonsense. But I certainly loved the villain. He was the most memorable thing from The Fifth Element. Of course, Bruce Willis's character was great, but Zorg was unbelievable. From the haircut, the mannerisms, just the weirdness of the character, the look, the performance, everything about it just added to an already great sci-fi film.
Yeah, I mean, it was an iconic role, you know, and an iconic film. Visuals in the film were absolutely stunning for its day. He's up against probably one of the biggest box office attractions at the time in Bruce Willis, but for some strange reason, the man Zorg, Mr. Zorg, and his haircut just stands out to me.
Yeah, it was a strange haircut, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The next film I actually seen him in, because The Fifth Element was actually my first brush with Mr. Oldman. The next film I seen him in was out the same year, and it was Air Force One, where he played Ivan Korshunov, I can't pronounce it, Korshunov, the head Russian terrorist who, of course, hijacks the president's plane, hence why it's called...
Villain, John.
It was another villain, yeah, and it was a very good villain. A lot of people would put him in the category of Hans Gruber from Die Hard. Again, up against a blockbuster actor in Harrison Ford playing President James Marshall. It was a decent film. I wouldn't say it was a great film, but it was a good action film, and he certainly played a memorable role in that film again. He seems to like playing villains. I see what you're saying with that. Yeah. Certainly early on in his career, but I think that's because he plays them so well.
Yeah, but that's got my creative juices flowing here, because I would love to see him playing Hans Gruber's cousin or something like that in the next Die Hard film. I think it would suit him very well, you know. But Air Force One up with Harrison Ford was a great film. Yeah,
the next film I seen him in was actually Hannibal. What I say I seen him, I didn't actually know it was him until very recently, because he wasn't actually billed on the film when it was released, playing the quadriplegic, badly disfigured, super rich sadist Mason Verger. It was a strange character and a very strange film. Now, when you're out doing Hannibal Lecter and the stakes for strangeness, then you know you've really nailed a strange character. And again, unrecognisable, much like Churchill in this film. Extensive makeup applied, and I think it speaks volumes for the man how modest he is, that he went to all that length getting the makeup put on. Must have took hours, and he was happy to accept an unbilled part in the film.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember, I don't remember who said this, but someone did say that at this point in his career he was the greatest actor ever lived that never won an Oscar. And you can see from those films there is some there that are credible to be, you know, nominated. But following the film that after Hannibal, his versatility in his roles shone through with a comedic performance in the hit show Friends.
Yeah, of course, he played himself in 2 episodes in that, and as you say, highly memorable, and really showcased his versatility.
He played a great drunk.
Yeah, yeah. And moving on from that, again, highlighting his versatility, a film which I only watched recently. It's a short film, it's only 9 minutes long, and you can catch it on YouTube if you don't want to buy it. I don't even know if you can buy it, actually. It's called Beat the Devil. It's the one word I can use to describe this is odd. He plays the devil. He refers to himself as the Prince of Darkness, and he looks like a mid-70s Ziggy Stardust era David Bowie with a wig, looking very skinny, and he stars alongside James Brown, who admits in the film that he negotiated a deal with the devil in his youth to attain fame and fortune, and then decides to go with Clive Owen, who is his driver in this film. How they managed to attract him to this, and Gary Oldman, is beyond me. James Brown I can understand. He decides to go and see the devil again and try and renegotiate a deal and see if he can reattain youth. And it ends up with a drag race through the Las Vegas Strip, and it's just utterly bizarre. But again, it was a great performance from Oldman, and it really did highlight his versatility. And I think after that we moved on to a slightly more serious franchise. Well, for some it might not be, but the Harry Potter franchise, of course, starring in Prisoner of Azkaban as Sirius Black. To this day, still my favourite Potter film. I thought everything about that film was great. A real shift in tone, visuals much darker than the first two films, and really the ever-present danger of Black that haunted both Harry and the film throughout. Oldman nailed the portrayal, looked gaunt, haunted, and the reveal at the end was absolutely epic. I think moving on, because I know you're not a big fan of the Harry Potter franchise, so I'll maybe briefly go through this. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire wasn't as prominent in that one. There was a real role reversal. He went from being a villain to, after the revelations at the end of Prisoner of Azkaban, being a kindly uncle and a family member that Harry never had, all the way through to Order of the Phoenix, where he returned with a bang, had a much meatier role, and obviously met a tragic end. Black was one of my favourite characters in the book and in the films. A tragic figure, and as I said, Oldman really nailed the character, the look and the emotion. It was a great trio of performances across three much better films than the one I've just mentioned. And it does have a small cameo in Deathly Hallows Part 2, but it's not really noteworthy. So yeah, I mean, that just about covers Harry Potter.
Yeah, in 2004 and 2005 it was a busy year for Mr. Oldman. I don't know if you know this one, John, but Gary Oldman submitted a recorded voice audition for the character of General Grievous in Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. George Lucas later chose the anonymous audition of Matthew Wood for the role instead. I
didn't know that, and I think that just about sums up George Lucas's ability as a director and of a caster. Why would you pick Matthew Wood, did you say? Wood, why would you pick a man like that over Gary Oldman? It's utterly strange, George. That's why you shouldn't direct films. And I think that really, of course, takes us into the role of Jim Gordon in the Dark Knight trilogy, and an iconic role.
No, I think it was an excellent choice on Chris Nolan's part, to cast him as Jim Gordon at that stage in his career. The cast at Batman Begins is phenomenal when you look at it, but Gary Oldman stands out for me in that film. He seems to be the sort of the moral compass of the whole story, if you know what I mean. The character of Bruce Wayne is very conflicted.
Yeah, and you've also got the mad character of Cillian Murphy playing Scarecrow, and then the very villainous Liam Neeson playing Ra's al Ghul. So yeah, I mean,
and I think this was a turning point in Gary Oldman's career as well, as far as playing, as we mentioned, villains. It seemed to be the turning point that in the Harry Potter franchise, where he was playing. I mean, and it seems to have held him in good stead since then, because though he's recently reached out to new audiences with these heroic roles in the Harry Potter and Dark Knight franchises. Obviously, for most of his career, his early career, he was best known for playing the over-the-top antagonists.
Yeah, I can only agree with you with Batman Begins. I thought Jim Gordon was quite understated, but one of the best characters in the film, and actually through the trilogy. And obviously in the Dark Knight, acting beside utter greatness from Ledger. He managed to hold his own, never looked out of place. Also got a promotion in that film to Commissioner Gordon, the character we all know.
I remember the line from the Joker, the way he said Commissioner, to him. But no,
and also the death of his predecessor, which was more enjoyable than it should have been, drinking that poison. Yeah, and then The Dark Knight Rises, again finishing a trio of fantastic performances and a truly great trilogy. Him and Bale, for me, really did anchor the entire series. As you say, he played the moral compass. Bale's Batman, maybe not so much, but I can't think of any other character that was present in all three films. Maybe you'll correct me, I'm not sure.
Probably Cillian Murphy's, but it was very, very small, especially in the second one and the third one. But no, I mean, as prominent characters go, apart from obviously Alfred and Bruce Wayne and Lucius Fox, he certainly was the anchor in that film, and as I said, the moral compass. Very corruptible city, Gotham, in Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. But he was the man that stuck to his morals, and I think Oldman played it brilliantly.
Yeah. Just touching upon a film that I've actually not seen, but it appears to be getting fantastic ratings. From 2012 as well, same year as Dark Knight Rises. It's called Lawless. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's got an incredible cast, that film.
Yeah, he plays Floyd Banner. Is Tom Hardy in that one as well?
Yeah, he's in that film, I've never seen it. It was actually surprising because being as big a Tom Hardy fan as I am, and Gary Oldman, that one slipped under my radar, so that's a bit strange. One I did see, which wasn't quite as good, was RoboCop in 2014. As a big fan of the original RoboCop franchise, this one was utterly terrible. It was a remake. I think the lead playing RoboCop actually starred in House of Cards. I forget his name, that's how unmemorable it was. Yeah. Oldman couldn't save that one, even with all his great acting ability. He couldn't save that one. It wasn't a great film. Is there anything?
There was a couple just before that, John. He was in A Christmas Carol in 2009. This was just off the back of The Dark Knight, in between both The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, where Oldman co-starred with Jim Carrey in a 2009 version of A Christmas Carol, in which Oldman actually played 3 roles. The Book of Eli as well, he played Carnegie. The following year he was in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy as George Smiley. Just up to this point, he's heavily involved in these big franchises. He then goes off and does some independent films. He then comes back into the big franchises again. Well, it just shows you how versatile this guy is. As you mentioned, ventured into the RoboCop franchise as well, and then moving on that same year to Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, which actually, as I touched upon, just watched recently, as I spoke about, I think it was Jason Clarke, was that his name? Yeah. This was a surprising role for me. It was actually a smaller role than I actually expected from watching the trailers. It was Dreyfus. It was a good character. As I said, limited screen time. It was more Caesar centric. As I said, Jason Clarke's Malcolm seeing more screen time alongside Caesar. But the majority of the time he was on the screen, he put in a believable performance, quite an emotional performance. There was one scene in particular where I think the power came back on and he seen a photo of his young son, and it was quite a powerful moment. So yeah, I mean, even in that small screen time, but still able to make an impact. Yeah,
and as I said earlier on, he also played General Mikhail Nesterov, I think his name was, in Child 44. Anyone that's not seen that film, recommend it. It's a great film. I think it might be available on Netflix. I think I did a review of that a few months back. But again, it just shows that it can go from big blockbuster films right down to these sort of lesser known independent indie films, and that takes us on to The Darkest Hour, which we were talking about earlier. I was very surprised when I saw the picture of him for this film. I don't really want to get too much into the trailer now, we've already talked about that, but very surprised with his appearance, John. His delivery with Churchill's lines, very powerful. And if someone said to me Gary Oldman's going to be playing Winston Churchill in a new film that's coming out next year, I would have said I can't see that happening. I just couldn't see it happening. Now I've seen how he looks in, how he sounds in the film, I'm totally on board.
Yeah, as I said earlier, with the real prosthetic heavy and makeup heavy role as Mason Verger in Hannibal, it shouldn't have surprised me really that he was willing to go to great lengths to portray a character, and with it being as iconic as Churchill, you can understand if this comes off, and I've no reason to suspect it won't. There is a potential that he could get nominated for an Oscar, an elusive Oscar. But yeah, I mean, I just think he's as I said earlier, a deeply underrated actor, and I think what strikes me more is when you hear the man speak off the screen, he just comes across as a very humble man. It's not been affected with fame. He's a common Londoner, and yeah, just a really nice person off screen as well as being a tremendously talented actor.
Yeah, I know you mentioned that you haven't saw Lawless. I do recommend that film, that you do see that, John. I have to put my hands up here and say that I've not seen the film Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I have seen, my grandfather was a big fan of Alec Guinness, and he tried to get me to watch the original TV version of it where he played George Smiley, but it's one that I think I will go back and see. I've obviously heard good things about this film, but I've just not got around to seeing it yet.
Well, this is the point in the show where we do a review. This week Stephen's going to be doing a review on a 2017 release based on an adaptation of a Stephen King novel.
1922 is a film released on 20th of October in the UK here on Netflix. Director Zach Gilditch has taken the Stephen King novel and adapted it very well to this movie. When this film was announced by Netflix, I was really excited and eager to see this latest adaptation from Stephen King, following on from It and Gerard's Game. Gerard's Game obviously, also released on Netflix, and It was obviously the big cinematic release of 2017. And there's always a few things that are guaranteed with a Stephen King movie, and you always get a good plot, great suspense, and a few frights on the journey. You combine this with the excellent direction from Zach Gilditch. Thomas Jane as Wilfred James, who, I must admit, he's not the biggest household name by any means, but here he gives probably the performance of his career. And to state Thomas Jane as Wilfred James, he says, "I believe that there is another man inside every man." And there certainly is in this film, with Jane portraying a very conniving man in the way he manipulates mostly his son to be involved in the murder of his own mother, and to be honest, there isn't really a sudden change in the character of Wilfred James. Right from the beginning is rather stern and quiet anyway. He doesn't show much love or care and attention towards his wife Arlette, who's played by Molly Parker. What I did like about the first hour of the movie was the build-up of how things went wrong between the husband, the wife and their son. Just to give you a brief description of the plot of the movie at this stage, Arlette was left 100 acres of prime land by her father on his passing. Now, Arlette had her own plans. She grew tired of the farm life and dreamed of a city life, opening up a little dress shop and taking their son Henry with her. Wilfred, obviously not wanting the same life and living out his life as a farmer, passing all this on to his son was his plans. Now, the next part of the movie really showed a lot of conflict and confrontations between husband and wife, and Henry being in the middle of all this and very conflicted on what he wanted from his life. And this is where you see the character of Wilfred beginning to manipulate Henry and getting inside his head and convincing him that the farm life is the only life. He also uses Henry's girlfriend as an emotional pawn in the game, and this only assists in Wilfred getting what he wants. Molly Parker as Arlette portrays a rather stubborn but strong woman in 1922, and I can only imagine this being unusual in this period of time, and it was kind of slightly illustrated by the character of Sally Cottery, who was the wife of neighbouring farmer Harlan Cottery, in a brief scene that she's shown washing the dishes saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, "Whatever you think is the best, dear," to her husband, highlighting possibly a common response from a woman back in the 1920s towards their husband. But not Arlette though. She is determined to make a life for her and her son in the city, and Wilfred knows this. This is where the character of Wilfred, his sudden change of heart, shouldn't surprise the audience. He's been brainwashing his son for the best part of 40 minutes screen time, which probably resulted in a few days, and suddenly he's backing down from what he wants and accepts giving up his lifestyle. Wilfred convinces Arlette that he, after much thought and Henry convincing him that the city life might be the best way to go, and I knew, you knew, and everybody knew at this point his plan was in motion. Celebrating this news with a drink, Arlette, a drinkerate I should say, Arlette, aided by Wilfred, is putting her to bed to sleep off her drunkenness, and so begins the murder of Arlette James. I'll not go into too much of how that happens and how they end up killing her. One thing I must mention before I go any further is that previously I mentioned a few frights on the journey. There isn't any of that in this film, and I don't want to even add an unfortunately to that, because the movie is more about guilt and regret. After committing this crime, you can see the downward spiral in the Wilfred, and to a lesser extent at this point in Henry, although guilt and regret will catch up with Henry further down the line and as the story unfolds. And you can see those little things, the audience can see and begin to notice these little things, and their relationship between father and son becomes strained and distant. Stephen King uses what the body can handle, the mind can't, in these characters, and slowly but surely the guilt of what they've done starts to take hold of these men for the rest of their lives. Mostly for Wilfred, living in the house, and it starts to take hold of him. The cinematography of the movie is also well done, and how the colours of brown, green and red appear in the tone, and the setting reminded me a little of the movie Signs, in an isolated farm surrounded by crop fields, giving the movie a claustrophobic vibe and a sense of being trapped physically and mentally. Pacing appears to be an issue in the last third of the movie. It felt overly stretched in the final part and overemphasised Wilfred's regret and sorrow in these scenes. Mostly the film's pacing for the rest of it is slow, and that's not a criticism. It highlights the patience of a conniving man. 1922 came as a surprise Netflix release to me, and it's one of the best movies released on the streaming service. Stephen King's novel is adapted well, and that's thanks to director Zach Gilditch, and in the acting in particular from Thomas Jane. I would recommend watching 1922 for this alone. The Movie Burners would like to thank you for joining us this week on the Movie Burner podcast. Don't forget that you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Movie Burners, and also visit the website for movie reviews on the Movie Burner blog at movieburnerentertainment.org.